Welcome to YG Roundtable, built by Max Weiss and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. I'm your host, David Belman, president of Belman Homes. On YG Roundtable, we bring together a select few industry leaders to share their secrets to success on a multitude of topics. On today's episode, we're discussing how you can network like a pro. With in-person networking just around the corner, this is a surefire way to brush up on your skills and get ready to crush it. Let's meet the experts.
Hi, I'm Allison Quartuccio. I'm broker-owner of Denali Realty Group. We're a full-service independent real estate firm located in Brookfield, Wisconsin, helping buyers and sellers alike.
Hi, my name is Susan Keel, and I'm the Business Development Manager for a company located in Sussex, Wisconsin, Advanced Communication Specialists, or ACS. And we provide low-voltage services to people who are building, remodeling, and general contractors who are building new buildings. So that encompasses a lot of different things: wiring, surround sound, security systems, speakers, AV equipment. We do all of the design with our clients, the installation, and of course, follow up with service and support. We've been in business for over 31 years, and we do everything low voltage, high excitement.
Max Weiss is a company that does it right the first time. A company that sets the curve in excellence. Rolled, curved, formed, forged, fabricated. A company that delivers on time. A company that drives innovation forward. A company that has satisfied customers for over 75 years. Anything metal, Max Weiss Company. Call or visit us online to learn more about Max Weiss Company.
For more than 80% of families, today's medical billing practices are confusing. At HPS, our goal is to improve the healthcare experience for the patient by making medical bill payments less stressful. In Wisconsin, that's all made possible by our comprehensive independent healthcare provider network. We simplify billing and lower costs for everyone involved in healthcare and offer various ways for individuals to pay without breaking the bank.
Today, we are talking about networking. Now, if you change one letter in the word networking, it becomes not working. And for many people, networking doesn't work for them. But fortunately, today, we are joined by two expert networkers, Susan Keel from ACS and Allison, help me with the pronunciation.
Quartuccio.
Quartuccio. And what company are you with, Allison?
Denali Realty Group.
Denali Realty Group. And you guys are going to help us navigate through networking, because a lot of us haven't been doing networking for a while now because of COVID and Zoom meetings and all that kind of stuff. So we need to brush up on our in-person networking skills, and that's what we're going to do today. So let's get started. What's your main goal, Susan, when you go to a networking event? Is it to meet people, grab business cards? How do you start?
I'm looking to connect with other professionals. I'm first and foremost looking for people that I can help, people where I have some kind of an overlap in my connections in the industry, where I might be able to set up a valuable introduction or help them to create an opportunity for their continued success.
Okay. How about you, Allison?
Agreed. I have built my profession and career and business based on networking. And what I've learned, it's more about giving than what you're getting back in.
Sure.
It's about being a valued resource to somebody else. The person you're talking to may not be your client, but you don't know who they know.
Absolutely.
And if you take a look at it a few steps beyond the person in front of you, that tends to be your ideal client and just having that warm introduction.
Do you think that's typically where most people go wrong with networking, is that I'm talking to this person, but I don't see any logical connection with the conversation? Do you think that's sometimes a problem that people have with networking?
I do see it as maybe somebody who's just not as mature in that networking space, where you kind of feel that abrasiveness of, this is who I am and this is what I do, and boom, 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 you know, and you're just kind of overwhelmed at first with their introduction. It's more of it's all about me versus what can we, the me versus we.
Sure.
And I think that's what you have to keep in mind.
So Allison, how do you work a room when you're networking?
I am what you would call an introvert extrovert. I am the loudest person in the room, very outgoing, but when I walk in and I don't know anybody, I tend to shy, and I feel like I've talked to many people throughout my 10 years of networking, and that seems to be a very common attribute that a lot of people have. So I like to go with somebody. I don't necessarily like to stay arm in arm with them.
Sure.
But I do like to go to someone to have a touch point in the room in case if I am feeling overwhelmed or I'm not making some good connections that you can kind of run up to and say, hey, how's this going for you?
Yeah.
Sort of a thing.
Okay. Yeah, it just sort of gets rid of that uncomfort level, right, that you have where you're like, oh, I don't want to be that one person standing by myself, right?
Right.
Okay. That's a good advice. So, for people, because a lot of people haven't been networking in person for a while, what do you do to prepare for networking? What are some tips or suggestions for someone? Hey, I'm going to my first networking event after, a whole year of being off. Any tips?
Well, 101 networking is you need business cards. How many times have we been in a room with somebody and they'll say, oh, I don't have a card, right? And you're kind of just always like amazed by that. So make sure you've got business cards for one.
That are up to date.
That too. Important information, up to date. And business cards, first of all, I like to say that your face is the billboard for your company. That's where people are going to meet and have that first impression. And then that business card just kind of helps to connect later when they want to recall you or reach out to you. So they're very important, but certainly the first impression is made just by you being a friendly face in the room.
And I will say, when passing off business cards, if you are not great at small talk and you don't know where to go, it's a wonderful way. Wow, the weight of this, and look at that picture, and wow, it's a great introduction, to start kind of talking about what you do.
I love it when somebody has a unique business card, maybe something a little different that's not normal. I know, like, mine has my picture on it and the edges are rounded, and some people are like, oh, this is a really cool card. And it's a conversation starter, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's a great piece of advice. If you're more of an introvert, maybe use something like that. Or I've had people give me different things that aren't, like, you get like a coaster. I had somebody give me a coin once with their face on it. And I was like, okay, if that doesn't start I was like, if that doesn't start a conversation, what will?
Right. Right.
So good stuff. So let's talk a little bit about your elevator pitch, because that's obviously very important in a networking event, especially if you're in a larger group and you have a lot of people that need to talk quickly. So what are some good components of an elevator pitch?
For me, my tagline, it's always added a little levity to my introduction. People know it, they love it, it makes them laugh, they try to remember it. Sometimes they mix it up a little bit, but it's always that one point where it lands, who Advanced Communication Specialist is and what we do.
All right, we got to hear it. You got to tell me though.
Low voltage, high excitement.
I love it.
I always end my elevator pitch with that, and it usually brings a chuckle up in the room.
How about you, Allison? Any suggestions for elevator pitches?
I think it depends on the event. If you're doing a networking event where you're standing up and doing a 30-second commercial that you're introducing yourself and you have that 30 seconds, I think you have to be very direct with what you're doing. I'm Allison Quartuccio. I'm broker owner of Denali Realty Group. We're an independent full-service firm, that works with buyers and sellers alike.
Perfect.
Sort of a thing. In a room, it's a little bit different. It always goes to, we talk real estate in the market and a crazy story somebody did, or I heard they had 35, and then that's a really warm introduction to talk about the market.
Yeah, I think it's great to tell stories and to share maybe a personal experience, because I think that makes you become more memorable, I would think, right?
Yes, and sometimes that elevator pitch will change depending on the audience. So I think it's good to be sensitive to that. If somebody's truly not going to be interested in one part of your business. Like you said, if you're talking buying or selling or, you know, residential construction or commercial construction for me, you know, depending on that audience, you can tailor that elevator speech so that it is more memorable and more effective.
I've definitely changed mine this year. Everyone was stuck in their house for the last year.
Sure.
They looked at those walls and perhaps outgrew them.
Absolutely, especially in real estate,
point.
right?
Right. So this year, within the last couple months, as I've been trying to get back into more networking or how I'm best going to network, I've really taken what's happened and the challenges of housing in the last year to try to say, hey, have you looked around your house and have you outgrown it? Have you, you know, a job transfer, or, you know, things like that, and really try to work that into it. And people are starting to.
Yeah, and I think anytime you can kind of mix something that's kind of current event with what you're doing, I think that lands a little better with people. So Susan, one thing that, you know, you taught me a lot about networking, and that's why I asked you to be on here. And one of the things that you taught me, which was interesting, was to have an ask when you're doing your little pitch. So can you tell me why that's important?
Because people are trying to sort through all this room full of introductions and information, so they want to know how they can connect with you. And to be an effective networker, you need to be able to share with your community how it is that you can best be assisted. It's a point of direction. It's what I need. It's why I'm here. It's how we can connect. It's what I can do for you. It's when I'm listening to those asks, I'm learning how I can assist those other people. When I'm naming my ask, it's kind of clearing the noise for everyone in the room to step up and be specific about how we can interface with our businesses.
Yeah, so you came to the networking event for a reason, and you're just basically saying what you're looking for, what you need. And I think that's brilliant that you do that. And I think the other thing that you taught me as well, which I think is valuable, is, you know, I have a blank sheet of paper and I write down people's names and, hey, so-and-so was looking for this. I do know somebody and I can connect you with them. And then now you've sort of built the relationship and you've helped each other. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. When I am at a networking event and somebody's looking for something that I can't possibly give them, but something triggers, a bookkeeper, you know, per se. I think we've all met people and we all have relationships, and I call them tools in our tool belt, that say, I know the greatest one, you guys should meet. And the next day, grab your business cards, the next day facilitate an introduction via email to both of them and say, I met you both, you have some similar synergies, I think you're gonna love each other, and now I'm gonna back out, because you don't need to continue in that relationship.
Absolutely.
You just need to make the introduction for them to do so.
So I love that point, and I think that's something that people miss in networking, is how do you successfully connect to people and then get out of the way. And I think you've kind of started the explanation. Do you have anything that maybe you'd want to add to that, Susan?
I do. It's like a web in your mind that you're building, and kind of departments of that web where you can interface people. And certainly that's where we as networkers build value, build reputation, build credibility. And sometimes I do make the introduction personally. I may meet at the first meeting, go for a cup of coffee and sit with them together and share how this collaboration could work. But I think that just to kind of bring this home, Allison, I know you would agree, is when you're helping people, they naturally want to turn around and help you. You know, that's human nature. And that's really one of the more beautiful parts of networking, is just that you get to feel that human spirit of connecting and assisting one another.
Absolutely, absolutely. I got into real estate after the housing recession. Never worked for a traditional office, opened up my own, didn't know a soul.
Brave.
Yeah.
Cried every day for 6 months. Didn't know how to meet people and didn't know what to do. And I joined a chamber of commerce that I didn't have a big name, and said, why would I ever join? You've got all these big names. No one's even gonna talk to me. And the best advice I ever got was just show up. And I said, what? Just show up.
Just show up.
Be consistent. Let your face be the face that they know at 7:30 in the morning that you pop up. I'm Allison Quartuccio, Denali Realty Group, and that's going to keep going. I had coffee and met with people for a year and a half probably before I actually sold a home. I didn't know where to start. But in that year and a half, the relationships I made have just paid forward tenfold. Yep. And that's how 10 years later, we're here.
I think you touched on something really valuable, and that's, I think a lot of people are always searching for instant gratification. It's like, I'm going to go to this thing and I want to get, 5 leads out of it or whatever, and that's not really the right approach, is it?
No, it's
not
measurable. No, right. It needs to be relationship driven, and you need time. I mean, did you marry your wife on your second date? It takes time to develop relationships, and it's a trust factor. If I am referring you to a close personal friend of mine or a business associate, you better show up and do what you say you're going to. And otherwise I can't refer you. So as we work off of a referral-based business, and that's how we are here, and that's how my name gets passed along, those are the relationships I cherish and work on the hardest, much to the dismay of my family and friends.
Yeah, so let's talk about, okay, you just completed your first networking event, you got some business cards, you met some people. Follow-up is really key, and I think a lot of people flub the follow-up. So I know, Susan, you've got a kind of a system almost for this. So why don't you share a little bit of some of your secrets?
Yeah, please do.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So yeah, when you leave that group, I like to head back to the office, put those business cards out, and now I'm going to make another touch. They say it takes 8 touches before you can sell something or really deliver on the relationship. So I've made a touch at that networking group. Now I'm going to send them an email. I'm going to look for them to make a connection on LinkedIn. I'm going to follow up with any introductions. I'm going to do email introductions where I'm going to copy that person on the introduction that I'm making. So there's going to be some work. There's usually hours of work involved after a networking meeting. If you forget that or don't follow up, then you've wasted all of that time. Quite honestly, it's just kind of a wasted effort.
So about how much time do you typically allocate for that follow-up after a network event?
I'd say 3 hours might be a good.
About 3 hours?
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is sort of like, I feel like this is like the dating question, but it's like, how soon should you actually follow up? Is it that same day? Do you do it the next day? How do you?
I'd say right away that day, and then continue, to follow up after that.
I like handwritten cards. There's still nothing about
that's a secret weapon.
It is. Sorry,
I love it.
Letting it all out. But yes, I do. I still like handwritten notes, and I enjoy getting them.
Absolutely.
And when I get one and I haven't sent one off, I'm mad.
Okay, you feel like you lost.
I have the guilt. Yes, I have the guilt. I'm like, they won up me on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, it is a nice touch, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think anytime you can do something a little different to stand out, I think that really helps you create opportunities in the future, and they know that you really took the time and you cared. And a handwritten card is an amazing way to do that because it's not like an automated email that just goes out where you can look at it and go, yeah, that looks like something that they sent out by a computer. They took the time and thought about it.
Differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
Another differentiation tip in the networking space is to hand them 2 business cards right away.
Oh, okay, I like that.
So the reason I do that is because normally people will try to give you one back, like, oh, you gave me 2 cards, and then it gives me the opportunity to say, one for you and one to pass on to someone you know. So it's like a built-in idea that, I'm supposed to, share your contact information with someone else. So 2 business cards, that's
a great
trick.
piece of advice. And, again, I think that goes back to the earlier point where we're talking about, maybe meeting somebody, maybe there's not a direct logical connection between you and the person you're talking to, but they may know that right person that you're trying to reach. And maybe, maybe you as a realtor, you're trying to reach somebody, hey, maybe you need a referral on a window cleaning company or something. You're talking to a guy in the trades, maybe he's not a window cleaning company, but he may know one, right?
Absolutely.
And so sometimes it's just 1 or 2 steps removed. And so by having those extra cards, you've given them another tool to go out and help promote and connect you, right? So I love that. That's great advice. So Susan, we talked about this earlier, and I want to bring this up because I think this is a fair point. A lot of people kind of avoid networking events because maybe their employer doesn't see the value in it, and they just say, oh, you're just going out to get free lunches and things like that. So how do you kind of manage that and make sure that you're providing value to your employer if you're not maybe self-employed?
Well, I kind of like to have a little bit of a tracking system where I'm actually recording those referrals. And after a great effort of networking, I was up to receiving at least one referral a day for our business. Wow. So that's a lot of prospecting that you can't be out selling and connecting people, but other people are connecting you. So to that effect, if you're letting your employer know that this survey, this client meeting, this prospect, this interview is a direct result of networking, keep informing them so that they do see and understand the value of it. You'll make rain when you're doing networking the right way. It's phenomenal, the business that is procured as a result of good networking.
And it's almost that I would think that they have an extra arm of a sales staff without actually compensating them. Right. And as you see those referrals come in,
there's no way we can, as one person, be out there,
right,
boots on the ground, the way we can for one another.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I think this is another trap that people fall into when they do networking, and it's, okay, I don't really have any business right now. I guess I'll go do some networking, right? And they jump in, they go do all these things, and then maybe they get busy and then they stop. Is there any recommendation for how to avoid that pitfall?
I think you have to know the groups, and I think you need to know who you are as a person, number one.
Okay.
I know myself. It took me a very long time, probably 3 or 4 years of running to every event I could, drinking coffee with anybody I could, developed an addiction to Starbucks right out the bat, or grabbing a glass of wine, and that's a whole nother story. I'm kidding. But I think you need to know yourself and what works for you. I used to run to every event downtown I could, and then I realized I hate driving. I'm terrible at parallel parking. It would take me at 3:30, I would get downtown by 5:30. I was just annoyed by the time my foot hit the door, and I just wasn't in that mindset. As my business was through a Chamber of Commerce and some other groups, I thought, why am I doing this? I think we said the phrase, you can't be all things to all people.
Correct.
Once I learned who I was and said, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, not for me. I'm going to concentrate on where I know I shine.
Sure.
That helps.
I think that's a challenge for a lot of people that do a lot of networking, right? Is that you start to get known and you start to make a lot of connections, and all of a sudden you sort of feel obligated that I have to, go to this thing for this person, or I need to help with this, and you start to be everything to everyone. So how do you maybe balance that, or how do you avoid that pitfall?
Just by making sure that the networking groups that you're participating in, that there's some overlap in what you do so that you can bring value to the group. I think when I started networking, I was in a lot of different groups, and then as I became more experienced, I realized that if I would take the principles that I had learned and apply them at our local builders association, where I could actively interface with people in that construction space, that it just became a lot more, my time was more valuable there for other people. I was able to help more people versus being out, like you said, downtown Milwaukee or whatever that community group that you're in, and then you have a lot of, you want to support everyone, but then you're looking at multi-level marketing businesses and trying to find a space in your life for that, and that's really not, as you're self-employed, I work for a company, that's not what our employers want us to be out doing.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's another pitfall that you mentioned, is that sometimes you get kind of sucked into these things, and you do want to help somebody, and that's part of networkers, is that they want to give, right, and they want to provide value, but then your employer may not be happy with you necessarily if they find out you're going to all these dinner parties and helping them pitch
You
products.
almost have to become kind of a connoisseur of where you're spending your time.
Well, and it's time and money. I mean, networking, there are people that buy leads in our industries, and there are people that network, and there's people that do a combination of both. People like, oh, you're just out having coffee, or you're out going to this event, and you're just having fun. Well, my time is just as valuable. What I have learned with some of these networking groups that back in the day, when you could go to them, I find the most success are ones that people have some skin in the game in, that aren't the free, come on in, have some enchiladas, and a margarita network sort of a thing.
What's wrong with that? Sounds good.
Hey,
But if you're actually putting forth an entry fee or or some sort of skin in the game, you kind of draw, I think, some more serious people versus some people that are just looking to get out for a night. And there's nothing wrong with either if that's where your business lies. If that's, but while you're trying to elevate and build those relationships to take you, it's hard sometimes.
I think you mentioned a good point in there, and that's like accountability. And I know like some of the groups that you've been in, Susan, there's sort of some built-in accountability within the group, right? And some expectations. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what kind of things you've set up before?
Sure, I think, attendance, again, the billboard for your company. So the more people see you and know you, the more they trust you. So trust is a big important part of a successful networking relationship. So I think that I guess that would be my number one on that.
Okay, yep, just being consistent and available. I know you had taught me something which I thought was interesting as well, was like always try and at least give like one referral after the meeting. So let's say you're in a group with 12 people and there's people doing everything the right way, they're doing the asks and they're doing everything, to at least try and follow up with one and give one referral, just so that there's, you're providing that value. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and a testimonial is also very powerful in a group. If you've had an interaction with someone, then you can stand up and face-to-face say, I had a great experience working with this company or this person. That's really important to do too. Really
and I love
honor
the
our
testimonial
relationships.
aspect, because nobody wants to go to a networking group and just give a name to give a name.
Sure, yep.
That's the worst.
Yeah, because you're putting your reputation on the
Right,
line as well, right?
right.
Because if you refer somebody to someone and it doesn't work out, guess what? You're probably going to get that phone call. You're going to get a nasty email.
Correct.
And say, why
correct.
did you send me to this
So
person?
it's bring value. If you don't have a referral, a testimonial, or
Okay.
I think that really goes a long way.
That makes a lot of sense. So this is something that happens from time to time too, especially if you network a lot. Sometimes you get in a group and maybe you've been in it a long time and it's starting to get stale, or you just don't feel like you're getting value out of it, or it's the same 6, 7 people. Any advice? What do you do? Do you get out of it? Do you change it up?
I've done both. I've left and I've stuck it out to see if we can get some new blood and really sit down and have some honest conversations that this is old and we're just basically meeting together to have lunch and no one's passing business, and love you girls, but I can have lunch with you at a different, at a different time.
Sure.
And then really have those conversations of trying to have people commit to find a different person to bring in and just to try to introduce some new people. But I think that's a very commonality that a lot of groups die out because of that fact.
It just gets stale. Well, and I like your suggestion there. That kind of leads into the next question, which is bringing guests. And do you recommend bringing guests? And is that a good idea? And it sounds like we're kind of going down the right path here. But tell me a little bit about that.
I do. I think that, again, that's networking. Knowing the flavor of that group and who could bring value, who would be, successful, fun, fits in, brings some energy, and is business minded. Again, networking is like referral based thinking, right? So I find that some people really get it, and then there's some people that are just kind of there to see what they get,
Yep.
And it's like we started
They're
with.
there for the cheeseburger, right?
It's definitely a giving situation.
Mm-hmm. And I think after this year of being home, it'll be very interesting. I am part of a group that has chosen to start meeting in person, and we've had the same over the last couple of years, 10 people in it. And it's been fine. We pass a ton of business, but it has definitely needed to grow. And as we've been talking and people are ready to leave their house and safely meet, in the last 2 or 3 times we've met, there has been maybe 6 guests each time.
Oh, wow. Okay,
right.
that's great.
Wow.
It's like a reset button, right?
It really is. We're all
Yeah.
kind of like, I walked in the other day, I was like, whoa, but I think people are craving community right now.
Absolutely.
And I think that
So true.
networking is really going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I think
coming up.
you're right, and I think
Yep.
people are tired of being at home and behind the Zoom screen and all that kind of stuff, and they miss going out and seeing people.
You do
and-
have to wear pants, mine is the Zoom thing. That is,
I'll put that on there as the
yeah.
best piece of advice. Wear pants. Well, here's something that's kind of awkward right now, and I'd love your thoughts on this, but how do you greet somebody now? I mean, do you shake their hand? Do you bump fists? Do you do the elbow thing? How do you recommend approaching that?
I'm a hugger, so this has been really, really hard. And I've been out showing houses, safely since
Sure.
everything started. So I have had a lot of face-to-face introductions and meeting people for the first time, and it's an awkward smile under your mask, to be completely honest,
Sure.
and kind of a fake one
Yeah.
of those. I don't think there's a right way yet.
I feel that, like, I feel out what is appropriate with that person. I'm looking, as soon as I approach them, I'm trying to read their signals.
Gotcha.
So either they're gonna move in, or they're gonna back out, or they have a mask on, or they don't offer their hands,
Sure.
or they're ready to hug.
Right.
Yeah, read the body
Connect.
language a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
and
it's-
I suppose it's an opportunity to make a little joke too, like, what are we doing? Are we doing that?
And it is.
Yeah.
It's a really good icebreaker. You're kind of doing the hokey pokey, like in and out, like, what are you doing? Sort of.
It is, but it's amazing how that one thing has just changed that dynamic of how we meet and
Isn't it
get
amazing?
together. Yeah,
And how quickly it changed.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's still changing as we go, right?
Absolutely.
It's a little bit more acceptable now to maybe do a handshake where it wasn't a couple months ago. And so, you don't want to make a faux pas necessarily in social settings.
Don't want to make people feel uncomfortable.
No, and I think that is really where we're going with networking. It's just about people's comfort level and
Sure.
not overstepping.
So I guess, let's take a step back for a minute and people that are just getting started into networking, what would be the best piece of advice for them, for someone that's maybe either out of college or they're, just haven't been in the networking game for a while and they want to get started? What kind of advice do you have?
Choose your networking groups wisely, and stay connected, stay in touch. Once you make that connection, you need to be diligent about staying in touch with them and to continue to consider those people for opportunities and introductions.
Okay.
No,
about you,
absolutely. And the staying consistent and going. In my industry, it's hard for me to do after 5s. I'm showing houses,
Yep.
or, and could come up like that, even if I've got the best of intentions. I'm usually not showing houses at 7:30 or 8 in the morning, so that tends
You want
to
the
be.
morning groups, sure.
I'm better at a morning group. I've gone in and out of evening groups and realized not for me,
Okay, that
So
makes
again,
sense.
I think it's about knowing yourself as a person. I think LinkedIn is a great resource, that there's a million groups out there that you can find, or meetups, and just kind of, I hate to say find your people, but find your people.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we have a whole episode just on LinkedIn, but let's talk about that because it does tie in with networking a little bit. And so how much more powerful has that made your networking by, mixing in LinkedIn with it?
For me, it hasn't. For me, I think it's really important that your LinkedIn profile is good. It's succinct, it's professional, because when you meet someone in a networking group, if they're doing their due diligence, they're going to go look at you on LinkedIn. So I think LinkedIn is a great follow-up for an initial introduction. I think it's important. You want your profile to be complete. You want your picture on there. If somebody doesn't have a picture on LinkedIn, I'm pretty much
Yeah, I agree.
Or a selfie
Yeah.
at the beach.
Yeah, maybe that's
move
not so
on.
serious.
Maybe
yeah.
time to move on.
Yeah. How about you, Allison? How do you feel? Do you leverage LinkedIn with your networking at all?
I am going to call myself out and say I do not.
Okay.
I, being self-employed and running around, and For selling homes, Facebook is more of
Okay.
works on that end.
More
of-
your space where you like to
More in my
connect.
space,
Okay.
yeah. So LinkedIn,
enough,
when
yeah.
something has to give, it's usually LinkedIn, and I have been talked to about it several times
Yep.
by LinkedIn experts that I need to up my game, and I am going to. I started this year, and it's just one of those things, you get busy, and you can't be all things to all people, and unfortunately that is the one part that I do let slide. But I do know I have utilized it. It is a wonderful resource.
Perfect. So we're getting close on time. I know we could talk about this all day. I've got two quick questions for you to close out. So one is, let's say someone connects with you and they ask you to go get a cup of coffee and you just don't feel right about it. You just feel like maybe it's a little too awkward. How do you respond to that?
I have done coffee, but put a time limit on it.
Okay.
I don't do happy hours. I think
Sure.
that becomes awkward.
Okay.
It's lingering, it's alcohol, it's not necessarily professional.
Sure, okay.
So that's how I've done it, and I don't do a lunch.
Okay.
It's really just a coffee and
Don't
with
do
a
lunch, okay.
and with a time limit.
Okay.
You know,
That sounds good.
because you just don't know, and if it's something that you kind of have a feeling, I think with anything in life, you listen to your gut.
Sure.
And if that gut reaction is, you know.
Okay.
But I'll still do a coffee and say, I've got 30 minutes or 45
Okay.
minutes, and
That's good advice.
Yeah.
What you, Susan?
Yeah, I would agree with Allison.
Yep. Save the after hours and the dinner things for maybe people you know a little bit better, have a better comfort level
Correct.
with, and that might be too much too soon, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then last but not least, how frequently do you think a network group should meet, and how often should someone be networking?
I think at minimum, depending on the group, if it's a small one professional group, at minimum twice a month. I think if you go less than that, you forget. And then if you have a conflict, you're not there. And then suddenly you're not seeing the same faces for 30, 60, 90 days. And there's no consistency.
fall out of the
There's no
awareness.
consistency. You're not building relationships.
Okay, that
Then.
makes sense. How about
That's
you,
a good consistency point. 2 weeks. It could be a month if the group is very dedicated. I'm in some groups where it's monthly and it's working very well.
Sure.
But especially when you're new, you're newly getting introduced to people, a couple times a month is good frequency. And then I think, as far as your week goes, for sure at least 8 hours a week. If you're in a business development, maybe 8 to 16 hours a week. Keeping in mind that that's not necessarily just face-to-face, but that could be your follow-up activities as well.
Okay, so on a weekly basis, allocate about a whole day's worth, or you could spread it out maybe 2 hours a day, or something
I
like
think
that.
using a calendar and some time management for that so that you're dedicated and that's your focus, because it's very easy to get pulled away from the follow-up and the networking because a sale will come in or something will happen.
Sure.
But really, that's the backbone of your sales.
I think that's fantastic advice, is have a calendar and make sure you're building not only the time to get to the event, do the event, but then some time afterwards, probably within a day or so, to make sure that you do your follow-ups and make sure you're maximizing your opportunity. Otherwise, maybe it's not so worthwhile for you, right? Well, thank you guys so much. This was super informative, and I'm sure everybody got a lot of information out of it. So I want to thank you both for your time and your expertise.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of YG Roundtable, built by Max Weiss and sponsored by Health Payment Systems. Our guests Susan Keel and Allison Quartuccio deserve a round of applause. If you've enjoyed this episode or have an idea for a future episode, make sure to leave a comment below and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow Young Guns on social media and listen to audio versions of our show wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, I'm your host, David Belman, president of Belman Homes. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.